Good morning, studio artists. I'm your host, Mr. Grenling, coming to you live from North St. Paul High School. Today, we are going to be looking at our name. Amazing, right? But today, we're going to add a really cool flavor to our name. We're going to do some blocky letters, and then we're also going to do some one-point perspective to this name. Now, actually, before I started teaching high school in the 622 school district, I worked for a non-traditional school district called Northwest Suburban Integration School District. Global Arts Village is what I worked for. And while doing that, one of the courses I taught was graffiti artistry. And so I always kind of have a fondness for doing graffiti looking like things, okay? So using it as an artistic inspiration. And so the first thing that people usually see about graffiti is the lettering. And we want to add an element of one-point perspective to this. But first, let's talk about the letters, okay? Write your letters real big, and most people, what they do is they like to make something 3D, is they just kind of go around and they make it, straighten out the lines like that. Okay, and this is fine. But if we want to kind of take it up a notch, we can add a little bit more stylization. If you look at different fonts, they have these little caps on the ends called serifs. Well, these little caps, these little ending pieces here, serifs, can be designed in any kind of way that you want to, okay? So if you want to make them blocky like they are like in Times New Roman, you can do that. But what graffiti artists have done, if they taken these end caps and really stylized them, so maybe make them look like they're stacks of buildings. And all I'm doing is kind of dressing up the ends like font normally is. Or sometimes you see, they'll exaggerate curves here. And they won't have things lined up exactly. Another thing that you'll often see are things like wild style. And this is where they take a lot of liberties of what the actual letter looks like, and they kind of weave it inside and outside of all kinds of kind of like these stringy ends that kind of get woven together like spaghetti. Okay, and they usually kind of call this like a wild style. I'm going to simplify this a little bit because you can get really intricate with this, and you can look at all kinds of videos. But typically you take your letter form and you're really going to dress it up, and so you have things going over and under. And what people typically will do is they'll make it so intricate and weavy that you can't even tell what letter it is now. Now you can still kind of see my G shape here for Mr. G. Okay, so these are some of my dressed up letter forms, right? And what we want to do is we want to do this in one-point perspective. And so after we've drawn our name around here, then we're going to start drawing all of these corners and have them go back to the 1 point. Now, if you have a ruler, that's great. This is the perfect tool for this job. Otherwise, you can also fold up a paper, about 4 times in half and get a nice thick straight edge. That works too. That's kind of how you make your own ruler. And all I'm doing is I'm drawing a bunch of lines back to this 1 point. And this is creating depth. Now this 1 point is our vanishing point. And so just drawing a line back to it gives it a sense of depth. Now some of the things we can do is we can create layers on our letters. Like for instance here, where this M is. So maybe I want this M to be in front of this R here. I'm just going to copy these lines and these angles here. And I'm going to have this depth part of the M go in front of this R. And if I shade it in, you'll kind of see it stand out. Right, and you see this M now standing in front of the R. Okay, now as we see, I'm pretty close to finishing here. I would still want to do a little bit of cleaning up as far as erasing some of my guidelines, like inside of my letter forms here. You probably also saw during my speed run, my speed drawing, that I put just a clean piece of paper underneath my hand so that my hand wasn't dragging as much. If you notice, whenever you touch the paper, you can smudge the paper, and so that happens when you're drawing. And so to keep the page a little bit cleaner while you're drawing on top of it, put another piece of paper underneath it, and that'll prevent some of the hand drag that you get. Now, technique-wise, it's probably better to learn how to keep your hand off the paper, but if you're sitting, this is actually pretty hard to do. One thing I'd recommend on the inside, just to kind of like make this a little bit cooler, try using some colors, using some markers, and decorate the inside with some sweet looking patterns. This isn't necessary, but it's just adding kind of a cool, just something a little bit extra to this project. I'm going to throw in lots of examples that you can look at for creating your three-dimensional letters. Now go ahead and try your hand at this very fun, very cool project.